Hello again, and thank you for staying with us. Labour experts say organized union federations' political influence in most countries is declining. The same goes for South Africa's trade union movement, which some experts warn has weakened over the years. So as we gear towards elections, let's look at this sector and explore different parties' standing when it comes to organized labour. I am joined by Sarah Smit from the Mail and Guardian. Sarah, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. So in light of the upcoming elections, how do you envision the role of trade unions and labour-related policies really shaping political discourse and the socio-economic landscape in the country?
Well, trade unions have always played a very important part in South Africa's democracy, and certainly they will continue to do so. However, some parties might believe, especially when it comes to growing the economy, that trade unions should take a kind of step back and kind of unleash the force of the business sector to allow the economy to grow. However, that is, of course, disputed.
So one article I'm referencing discusses the declining of trade unions and also its potential impact on the economy and the social dynamics as well. So from your perspective, how significant are trade unions in really shaping policies and protecting workers' rights here in South Africa?
Trade unions are incredibly important. In the main, they're important because they raise the bar for equality in our country. They raise wages among their members and non-members. And with their waning power, that is certainly a question as to whether we'll be able to maintain the already quite low levels of equality in our country.
So to take from Nobel laureate economist Angus Deaton, he highlights the widening gap between executives and workers, partly attributing it to this declining of trade unions. How do you think this disparity, even in wages, how does it affect the broader societal fabric and also the economic stability in South Africa?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Deaton was, of course, speaking about the US, where trade unions are arguably less powerful than they are in South Africa. However, this period of weakening trade unions in South Africa and elsewhere have seen widening inequalities. And of course, when inequalities rise, that kind of tears at the social fabrics of countries. And we've seen it very recently in South Africa, how economic instability has started to creep into the kind of environment of South Africa, often to violent and deadly effect.
So South Africa has also experienced economic stagnation, as you know, which coincides with the trade union weaknesses. In your opinion, what strategies could be implemented to really revitalize the trade union movement and enhance its effectiveness in advocating for workers' interests and rights in South Africa?
Well, growth is an important part of that. Of course, we've seen with this economic stagnation that particularly private sector unions have lost power. So an important thing that we always need to be looking at is how to grow our economy. Another part is kind of looking at the unions themselves. I know that a lot of the criticism of unions is that their character has kind of failed in recent years. So that's kind of a point of introspection for the trade unions themselves. And then also kind of seeing trade unions and workers' rights as an important part of our economic stability, and that will come from both business and labor as well as government.
So in your opinion, is there a correlation between trade union strengths and economic prosperity? And if so, how can this relationship be better communicated to especially policymakers and the public to foster more balanced labor policies?
I think there certainly is a strong correlation between a strong trade union movement, and that means a trade union movement of good, strong character as well, and economic growth. Of course, you can also see the opposite side. I mean, trade unions aren't always a force of economic growth, and business isn't always a force of economic growth either. However, that again is a question of character and not of their existence. I think that we really need to ensure that trade unions are a strong part of our economy, and that's a difficult work to do, but I think it's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on.
Sarah, considering the multifaceted nature of labor relations, how do you believe stakeholders, including the government, employers, as well as trade unions, can really collaborate to address some of the challenges that are facing the labor market, while also ensuring fair treatment and opportunities for workers?
Yes, it's quite interesting because South Africa's labor relations have very much been kind of characterized by conflict rather than compromise. And that's a fault of both business and labor. So it's important, of course, to ensure that compromises works on both sides. Unfortunately, a lot of people, lobby groups, political parties see that in order to get rid of the conflict, we should get rid of trade unions altogether, or to diminish their strength in South Africa's political economy. But that will only kind of tear away at the social fabric of our country. So really it is about ensuring that trade unions and business are both equally as strong as one another, so that they can both come to the table at the same time and work on these compromises that ensure that that equality is at a strong level, and that the political economy is working flawlessly.
Sarah, as we wrap up our conversation, I want to make one example. It's the DA's proposals to make trade unions pay deposits before embarking on strikes. It really has stirred up some controversy in recent times. What are the potential ramifications of such measures on workers' ability to really negotiate fair working conditions and wages?
Yes, I mean, it's an interesting proposal, particularly because it stands out as a deterrent to strike action. And we've seen this quite recently with laws asking trade unions to use a secret ballot before they go on embark on strikes. But when you kind of rip away at this kind of fundamental right to strike, you start taking away from employees wanting to even be members of trade unions, and that starts to chip away at the very kind of fabric of labor relations in our country, taking away the ability to bargain fairly in the workplace.